easily, 479-1160 or 349-WCCS. If you want to write it to us on Facebook as you're watching the interview, you can do that too, and Jake will pass it along to you here this morning. Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Fabulously well.
That's very good.
Good to have you with us here today. So what's going on? Things exciting in the worlds of agriculture right now?
Things are moving along.
Yeah, they are.
Here we are in June already.
We're making a transition, aren't we, from spring grasses to summer grasses, and it might be a little bit delayed because it hasn't been as hot as we might expect, but that transition will come.
It will.
Yeah.
But it's still, things are growing, very green.
Yeah.
Need to mow at least once a week, maybe
Yeah.
more often yet.
In fact, it is, the grass is still sort of in spring mode, isn't it? Because it's been cooler.
Yeah. Couple hot days there, but that didn't seem to affect it much. And then we get a little bit of moisture, keep things going. Cooler temperatures now, both day and nighttime temperatures, so that'll keep it growing as well.
As you know,
As it will the weeds.
Yes. Yes, we're quite aware of that. As you know, at my house, I have those lovely yews.
Yes.
And they are just growing like crazy right now. Normally, I've already had them trimmed, but I've had a little bit of trouble getting that done here because it's usually Memorial Day weekend when that gets done, or just before. So they're pretty shaggy right now. When I do trim them, it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult, but it really shouldn't affect what they're going to look like afterwards just because I let them go longer, right?
No, it shouldn't. That growth will be a little bit longer, and then, if you're trying to maintain that particular size, if you don't want them to get any larger, then you'll be taking more off than you normally would at that first pruning. But you're usually pruning those more than once a season anyways.
Well, the winter sort of battered them. It's usually 3 times, right before Memorial Day, right before the 4th. And early in August, that I have to trim them up. And there's, I think, 26 of them, 23 or 26 of them. It takes a long time for me to get them done. If I don't get them done at all this year, and they have a year of uninhibited growth, shaping them up could be a little bit of a problem, huh?
It'll be different because you'll almost have to let them be a little bit larger in size. You can take them back, because you still have growth there behind where you've normally pruned to.
Yeah.
We don't want to go too far back in the plant, farther than where you've maintained them. It's good to have some openings in there. The more natural we can leave them, the better, although they can be formally sheared and shaped and maintained at that level. But when things get too much growth on them or we leave them for too long, then it becomes more challenging. We're cutting into older wood. But it is good on yews, as well as some other evergreen plants, to make some holes there. Not noticeable holes, but openings that light can get into that surface. If it's sheared really, really tight, and it's dense right on that surface, if you look at that over time, there'll only be needles or foliage within an inch or two of that surface because it's so dense and, it's covered, the canopy's covered that surface. When you look down in the plant, it'll be dark in there. And so when it's too dark, then you can't get needle growth back into the plant. So just taking some hand clippers and pruning just a branch here or there around the plant, letting light in deeper into the plant, will maintain a thicker, you'll have more depth of foliage there, which is good. It gives you a little flexibility to work with if you need to cut it back harder. And of course, some plants, you cut them back too far, they don't regenerate needles or foliage back in, so you have to be careful about that.
Well, other shrubs, I want to talk to you because you just raised a good point. A few years ago, of course, I've got all these shrubs in the house, at the house, and some of them are going 6-7 feet across. They're big. And a few years ago, something went through and just absolutely chewed them up. And some of them are still not recovered. Now, some in the front yard, I was able to actually retrain them to come back in, fill in the gap where things got dead, cut out the bad stuff and fill in the gap. And they've grown back together pretty nicely. One in particular has a gap that's probably as wide as this console that I had to cut out all kinds of dead wood. Can I train that to come back around and fill in that circular shrub simply with baler string or something like that? Can I do that in order to get it to try to fill back in?
Yeah, you can retrain, and that's would be an advantage of letting some longer growth there, letting that grow over that area, and letting it fill back in. And granted, it will take several years to do that. Won't happen all at once.
Yeah.
But even having that light in there and having the living wood around there, you can get branches to grow that direction, and you could even, use the baler twine or string or something to
Suggest.
just direct. Yes. Yeah. And when a lot of times when branches are young and we have that new growth, they're flexible. So you can kind of direct them going in different directions than they're maybe trying to go, and fill in gaps like that over time. And you might get a foot of growth on some of those branches this year if you didn't clip them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, some of the
that
ones
can help.
Yeah. I mean, they were pretty bad, so I had to cut out all that dead stuff.
And that plant could be stressed a little bit that it's not growing as fast as some of the others.
Well, it feels bullied by the other plants?
Well, it could be, yeah.
Oh, they keep picking on me. 479-1160, 349-WCCS. If you want to ask Bob a question here this morning, you can also get to us on Facebook.
And that's, we can direct things, and naturally plants will grow towards the light. So if you have plants that are that maybe need full sun, but you have them sited in partial shade, just kind of look at where are they going? How are they growing? And in most cases, they're going to send that growth toward the light. So they might get out of kilter a little bit. They might be bowed, and and we see that in indoors as well. When you have plants in front of a window, those plants still can stretch and bend and grow towards that where the light is stronger. So we can kind of observe plants, and we can train them then to do that. Apple trees are an example where we can really, and there's other species as well, but apples are one where they'll train them because they want them to be in a hedgerow or they want them to be on a trellis. So they'll take that new growth and they'll bend that. And they actually make ties and things that are specific to that can be used for other purposes, but they're almost like gum bands, or there's been different ways devised to do that over time. But they'll, even on the top of the tree, if they don't want it to grow anymore, they'll take that top leader and they'll arch it over and head it down, and that'll
head it down.
Yeah, almost like a weeping shrub or tree will do naturally, but not the case so much with apple trees. They're usually trying to grow up, but they'll bend those over, and then that'll help reduce the amount of growth or get that more directional. And keep it within that hedgerow, and they'll tie them around to the sides, and especially if they're on wire on a trellis, at least get them close there so that they're okay. But we can do that, and especially when the year of when they're 1 or 2 years old, they're flexible enough that you can bend those. Or if you have branches that are growing up at too tight of an angle, so very narrow angle between the main trunk and the branch. Those are going to be weak. Those aren't going to support fruit very well. Or you'll get too many fruit on there, and then they'll just split off. So we can hold that branch down. They'll use pieces of wood or other ties that you can structurally force that branch downward a little bit, so that it has a better angle of attachment to the trunk. 90-degree attachment is the strongest you can get. Mm-hmm. The downside to that on an apple tree is that if you have that horizontal branch, there are buds along that branch that will naturally break open, and then it will send shoots straight up in the air. Send up water sprouts, straight up in the air. So if we change that angle a little bit, it reduces that. Then you don't have to prune those out, but you have a stronger branch, more capable of holding fruit.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And speaking of fruit, you'll have to. There's a lot of variability around the region with how much fruit you might have on your tree. We had that very cold snap early when trees were just starting to come out. The buds may not have been fully open. The flowers weren't open yet, but they were coming out of dormancy, and we had that really cold snap, and there was nothing we could do about it. It just came through. That did a lot of damage around the region, but it's very spotty, on your location as to how much that might have affected your fruit. So you might be looking at your tree and not have any fruit on it right now.
Yeah.
Or you might be loaded. So you might have to thin, or you might wish you had more fruit on there.
There you go. Thin or thick, he's Bob Pollock, and he's been with us here this morning on Indiana in the Morning. Thanks.
You're welcome.
It's the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160.